Okay, so tonight's special session with Miss Julie Miller on executive functioning skills for college and beyond. I was super excited because a coworker shared at a conference earlier this year that they had known Julie, gone through her program, and that it was absolutely fabulous. And I think everybody can use some executive functioning brush up. So I am really happy to have her share some skills and then resources with you. I will also share with you guys at the end the resources that we have available to clients in your files based on this. And as well, Julie will be sharing the opportunity if your student or even yourself needs support in this process, how you can engage with her in order to make that happen. So, Julie, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. Well, Crystal, thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm really thrilled to be here. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about our company. It's called Executive Functioning Success. You can find it on the web by Googling that. Our company was started by Mary D. Sklar. She is a very interesting woman, and she has been studying executive functionings for at least the last 20 years. And before neuroscientists were even calling it executive functioning skills. She herself is time blind, she will say, or time challenged, and she is an educator. So while she was teaching, she noticed that some of her students were having some issues with getting things done or turning things on time or being organized. And so she developed this curriculum and now this company so that we can reach out and help those who want to have a little support. And to spread the knowledge about executive function skills and how important they are and how we can improve them. And so there's just a picture of the curriculum that we use, Seeing My Time. I myself have been an educator for almost 30 years. I have been in the classroom and just retired last year to do this full time with Mary D. I'm Julie, by the way. I began my deep dive into executive functioning when my oldest son was in middle school. So this is going on 10 years ago. Super smart kid, didn't turn in any homework ever. Big struggle. It was a big struggle for us. He was diagnosed with ADD. And so we were given Mary D's book, 50 Tips, by the counselor at the school. And it just was so helpful to me. It's an easy read. I loved it. And then she came to speak. I'm lucky enough to live in Portland where she operates the business. And I heard her speak and I was like, oh my gosh, everything she's saying is like she can have a camera into my house and what we're going through. So as an educator and a parent, I embrace the curriculum. I have been using it ever since in my teaching, my parenting, and now as my career to be able to spread it to other people. My promise to you tonight is that you're going to come away with at least one useful thing that you can do to support your brain. Time is really valuable, as we all know. So we are going to just send you on your way with some knowledge and some tools you can use. So why do we want to know about executive functions? Well, John Medina several years said executive function is actually a better predictor of academic success than IQ. All right. Since then, this has been backed up by many organizations. For lots of information, check out Harvard's Center for the Developing Child. They got a lot of infographics and activities there. This has been studied and is true. Executive function is necessary for academic success and for success out in the world. But we need some knowledge in order to get to that success. Tonight, we're going to focus on the brain to understand and strengthen skills that you will need or your students will need. So we start our program always with education. Understanding executive functions is key to building on them. And so tonight, we're going to look at how the brain is wired, why that brain may not be doing what we expect it to do, and what tools and supports can we add in order to be successful without a lot of stress. So the way the brain is wired affects our ability to get things done. And that part of the brain is called it's all in the prefrontal cortex, and the skills are called executive function skills. Now, neuroscientists don't all agree on which skills should be included, which skills shouldn't. It's very complicated, and it's like a knot that they're trying to untangle all the time. We use the method developed by Dawson and Guerre for adolescents. And so I'm going to go through these skills pretty quickly, but I want you to think about your child or yourself and think about whether or not this is a skill that is easy for your brain or their brain. Okay. So the first one is metacognition. This is thinking about your thinking. This is your self-awareness, your ability to understand that there is a problem and maybe I want to change it. This is the head honcho of the skills, so to speak. It sort of directs all the others. Goal-directed persistence is your ability to finish things. So finishing things is important to you. So once you start something, you finish it. The next skill is flexibility. This is the brain's ability to adapt, to change direction, to transition, to think outside of the box. Sustained attention. This is an interesting one because the brain is never not paying attention, right? Your brain is always paying attention. The issue comes when the brain isn't paying attention to what we want it to pay attention to, which is one of the biggest things that was happening with my son. He was very hyper-focused on what he wanted to do and very difficult for him to focus on things that other people needed him to do. Response inhibition. This is your brain's ability to delay gratification. If anybody knows about the marshmallow test, that's what this is, okay? It's your ability to say, I'm going to work now and play later. It's also your ability to not blurt out, interrupt people, or to say things that maybe you might not have wanted to say on text or phone calls, that sort of thing. Working memory. Your working memory is your ability to hold on to information and do something with it. Okay, so we like to think of working memory as a desk that you have in your brain. And that desk has enough room for a certain amount of information. And when it gets overloaded, the information that's there goes away, right? And often it's like thinking that people didn't forget or it wasn't important to them, but really it's their working memory. So I think you might have experienced this. What happens with working memory is, say you're in the kitchen and you think, oh yeah, I wanted to start the laundry. So then you go into the bedroom to get the laundry. And by the time you get there, that thought's gone. You're like, why did I come into this room? What am I doing? Right? So you go back to the kitchen and the memory comes back and you're like, oh yeah, I wanted to go and get the laundry. Okay. What happened is your working memory got overloaded. So what you were doing left the desk and you had to go back to the kitchen to access your visual memory to bring it back. So super, super interesting, that brain. Planning and prioritization. Okay, this skill is important in order to succeed in academics, right? Especially when we're making that change to college where we might have multiple things we have to prioritize.
Julie,
Yes. Question?
Somebody unmuted. Keep going.
Oh, okay. I thought it was my name. Okay. So anyway, planning and prioritization is about your ability to hold something that's going to happen in the future and work on it. Interestingly, adult brains go out 3 months, which is not very far when you think of everything we're trying to accomplish. Young brains go out 5 to 7 days, right? So their brain is always in the now. And so it is very hard for them to remember projects or multi-step things until the brain becomes fully mature. And even then, it can still be really hard. Time management is your ability to know how long things take and then use that information for your own benefit or purposefully. Okay. Some people have an internal clock and they know how much time is passing, others don't. And if you don't, we need to use timers to find out. Organization, believe it or not, is an executive functioning skill, and it doesn't include piles. Organization is having a home for everything so that you're not misplacing things and they live in a certain place. Task initiation is your ability to get started without being nagged. All of these 10 that we have talked about are located here in the prefrontal cortex. Okay. Controlling emotions is the 11th skill, and it is located at the base of the brain deep inside. Okay. Why this is important is because that amygdala controls the flow of information, and it only sends information to the prefrontal cortex when it feels safe. And when it doesn't, it floods the prefrontal cortex with cortisol, and your brain flips, and literally your prefrontal cortex and all of those skills are offline. Okay. So that's a quick rundown of them. Let's look at how they are interconnected in some of the big projects that you and your students are going to be facing. So the first one is, if we're going to apply to college, right, it's probably not something we've done before. So you have Crystal to help. But before you got to that step, you had to realize, I need to have some help or guidance on this. And in order to do that, you need to have really good self-awareness and metacognition. You're going to have to gather documents that are needed. So you're going to need organization to find those and task initiation to get started. You might have to fill out multiple applications. So you need time management, planning and prioritization to make sure it all gets done. You have to stick with this process long enough to complete it, right? That is goal-directed persistence and sustained attention. And you also want to complete those applications on time, right? If we miss that deadline, we miss out on the scholarships or the financial aid. So that requires time management. And we have to remember to click submit. Like we think we finished everything, but we forgot to actually turn it in. So remembering to do that is working memory. Okay. So all the skills are interrelated, and it takes lots of skills in order to do a task like apply for college. So we've applied for college, we've gotten in. Now what skills do we need to get through the first term of college, right? This is something new. We haven't done it before. So if we're moving into a new housing or a shared space, that's a different experience for some of us. That's going to require a lot of organization, a lot of metacognition, a lot of flexibility. We're going to have to go to class on time. It's time management. We're going to have to get started on not just our homework, but our studying and our reading and our reviewing for quizzes. All of that requires enormous task initiation. There isn't going to be someone there saying, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Right? So we have to make sure we can do that. Turning our homework in or hitting submit, again, working memory. The idea that you might need to ask for help. You're doing something you haven't done before. You might need some help. That's going to, again, require your metacognition, being aware of what's going on. And lastly, in college, it's different in that you're going to have a lot of assignments due at the same time, a lot of multi-project, multi-step projects. And then if we're going to make progress on them without getting overwhelmed, we're going to need sustained attention, goal-directed persistence, planning and prioritization, metacognition, right? So all of these things are really, really important, not only for high school, college, but also for life. When you go to get a career, all of these things come into play. So if these executive functions are so important, what factors affect them? Right? The first factor is that most of our students' brains are not done growing. They do not have they do not have mature prefrontal cortexes. So if we look at this study, they looked at inhibitory control, and they are monitoring it over time, how it matures. And an average inhibitory control, or what we call response inhibition, is not mature until after 21. Right? So that's our ability to say, oh yeah, I'm not going to go to that party tonight at college. I'm going to do my studying instead. Really hard for young people to do. Working memory. Working memory is involved in everything we're doing, knowing where to go, what we're doing, what we have to study, all of that. Not until 24, even older maybe, right? Let's really think about that. Our students that are going off to college do not have fully mature prefrontal cortexes. Goal setting and problem solving. This is a mix of what we call metacognition, goal directed persistence, and flexibility, way up at 25. Way up at 25. So until our brains mature, we need to have some support with these skills because it is expected that we can do them in order to be successful. Um, Car insurance companies have used this information for a very long time. If you turn 20, when you turn 25, your car insurance goes down because they know that that is what the science tells us, that the prefrontal cortex matures after age 25. In addition, if you've been diagnosed, if you have a brain with ADD, your skills, that brain's skills tend to be 3 years behind the neurotypical peers, right? That means that a senior in high school really has executive functioning skills around 14 or a freshman, right? And that doesn't mean they aren't mature or they aren't smart or they aren't, great kids. It doesn't mean any of that. All it means is that those 11 skills are not fully developed yet. Environmental and situations affect these executive functioning skills. They are very influenced. They are influenced by everything around us. So stress, increased demands, we have more work to think about, new challenges that we haven't done before. If we're thirsty or hungry or tired, all of those things will cause our brain to not work as well as we want it to. Then we can have mental health issues, depression or anxiety. Those things affect our prefrontal cortex and the way it functions. So what I want you to remember is that we have a feeling brain that thinks. That amygdala is very strong and it grows first. We have a feeling brain that thinks. We do not have a thinking brain that feels. I'm going to say that again. We have a feeling brain that thinks. We do not have a thinking brain that feels. Also, when we change lifestyles, there is an increase in cognitive load. So that means that the things we're expecting our brain to track and the energy it takes to do that increases. The brain will only spend a certain amount of energy on things that it feels will lead to its survival. And if it doesn't, it's not going to spend the energy. So when we have increased cognitive load on our skills to get things done, it leaves less energy for us to study and learn. Okay. So whenever expectations go up, like starting kindergarten, going to middle school, going to high school, going to college, having a career, having kids, all of those things increase expectations on our brain. And that causes our skills to go down for a while. And it causes us a lot of frustration. So what I just want you to be aware of tonight is that it's normal and that it will pass. Your brain will catch up, and there are a lot of tools you can use until it does. Because of neuroplasticity, our brain is amazing. It grows new neurons, it makes neurons stronger, it makes pathways stronger, and using tools is how we do that. Executive skills adapt and become stronger with practice, explicit instruction, and tools. So stop for a minute and just think, what is your key idea so far? And put that in the chat. And I'll give you just about a minute for that.
So Julie, when you say key idea, what do you mean by that?
Great question. So what I mean is, what stuck out to you? What is something you didn't know before? What is a piece of information you want to make sure you remember?
Okay.
It's
So,
important that we process information and grab onto something in order for learning to occur.
okay, guys, so on behalf of your children or yourself or others, put in the chat then for us, what is something that you can see that you want to remember or something that you think is super helpful? Abraham, you raised your hand. Is the chat not open? Everyone and anyone directly. Everyone. Aha, there you go. It's normal for the brain to feel overloaded when others or expectations rise. The amygdala can inhibit the executive functions of the prefrontal cortex when you don't feel safe.
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it was my bad. I didn't have the chat on.
No, that's okay. I surprised you with that one. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next section, but please, oh, look, there's more coming through.
Big changes reduce your skill for a little while. The ADHD brain is 3 years behind in maturity. I do love the science of all of this. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Excellent job. Okay. Feel free to keep posting and we can look at them again at the end as well. Again, if we grab onto something that was important to us, that's going to help your brain remember what we talked about. All right, so we've understood that the brain has certain skills. It's wired to get things done. The growth of those skills depends on genetics, right? We're born with a design, so to speak, that's going to happen. How strong that design gets depends on our practice, the opportunities we have to use it, and it is very much affected by life around us. So when we want to support our brain, what are the best things that we can do? The first best thing that you can do is use time tools, right? Time is invisible. We can have a clock that shows us the passage of time, but we can't actually see it. The brain does what it sees, and it can't see time, right? So one of the tools that we're going to talk about is an analog clock. We're going to talk about how to use timers, and we're going to talk about dry erase boards. Richard Feynman said when the Casio watch came out, the first digital one that like cost $1,000, he said, digital watches will be the end of our civilization. Wow. He said that on NPR. It was a pretty big statement, right? Um, and what he means, I think, is digital clocks are a sentence. Okay. It tells us it's 6:15. That's great. That gives us information. We can extrapolate from that. We know it's 45 minutes till 7. However, more of our brain is dedicated to visual processing than anything else. And an analog clock gives us the space of time. So the brain sees a quarter, right? And it compares it to 3/4. And that's different. The picture of 3/4 versus a quarter is different for the brain. So analog clocks are really very, very important in our lives. And changing digital, like watches or whatever, to an analog face, great start. So analog clocks are needed wherever we get lost in time, wherever you're sitting there scrolling and you forget what time it is, or reading, or playing a video game, or whatever it is, an analog clock is very helpful. It's also very helpful to have it in front of you when you're working. It just helps ground the brain. So take a moment, and you don't have to put in the chat, but just think to yourself, where do I need an analog clock? Where might I put one? Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is dry erase boards. So remember, I said the brain does what it sees. So what we want to get done needs to be in sight. All right. Dry erase boards are great for this. They're all kinds. This is a small one that would just go on your desk, and actually your phone fits in that little curvy part. But it's like this, it's like a task list, which I'm sure many of us have done. You write down what you're going to do, and then you cross it off. Crossing it off releases dopamine, which makes you feel good, and you do another one. All right. This is because of the dopamine reward system, which we don't totally have time to go into tonight. But this is why some of you make a list and then you do something that wasn't on the list. And then you go back and put it on the list and cross it out, right? It makes you feel good. It's dopamine. So not only are we keeping in sight what we need to do, but we're using the way our brain is wired to motivate us to keep doing it or to do it again. Timers. There are all kinds of timers. I like the cube timer because it doesn't count down time, right? I'm not seeing my time go away when I use it. We want to be very careful with timers. We never want to use them to finish. We don't want to race. That can be very anxiety producing. What timers' purpose is to uh, alert us to our metacognition, to make us aware we have a choice, and also to monitor progress, right? Those are the two purposes of the timer. And the way that we can use it is one in transitions, or I call breaks, I call them intermissions. So transitions or intermissions. If you're going to take an intermission, set a timer so that your brain knows, oh, now it's time to go back. If you're going to have to leave somewhere and be there at 7 and you know you need to leave at 6:30, set a timer for 6:20 because it takes time to transition. It takes time to get out of the house. And so you need to account for that so that you won't be late. That's going to come into play on campus as well, because we think, oh, the class is just right over there, but really it's across the quad in a 15-minute walk. And we forget to account for that. Focus and motivation. We can use the timer to get through things we really don't want to do. So instead of saying, I'm going to finish that, say, I'm going to work on it for 20 minutes. Set a timer, work on it for 20 minutes. When you're done, you will get dopamine and maybe you'll do another 20 minutes, right? So break things down into very small pieces so that your brain will do them. We need to use timers to know how long things take if we don't already know. We cannot manage our time if we do not know how long things take. They're also great for remembering to do something. So those phone alarms are fantastic, right? Because they can go off at a certain time of day or even when you're in a certain location and they can remind you, hey, I was going to go to the store, or hey, I was going to stop at the library and get a book, whatever it is. Okay. Future thinking is the key to success. And remember, that's a skill in the brain that is not fully developed. So naturally, our brains are in the present, and we need to build future thinking. The best way to do that is with a planner. The issue or the challenge comes in that many of our students are given calendars or planners before they're ready to use them. And they're given without any brain science behind them. So they don't understand why it's helpful and it all just looks really complicated. Okay, so be careful when you're picking out a planner, and also encourage your students or your children to play with it, right? You don't have to do every page and make it perfect. You just have to see what parts of it are helping your brain, which parts of it are bringing down your anxiety. So I'm going to use our planner as an example. So it starts with a year, right? Students need to have a picture of when class starts and when it ends. And we can use color codes in order to make things easy. Always start with the fun. So in pink are the vacations, right? When do I not have to go to school? That's what we all want to know. When do I not have to be at work? When are my vacations? When are the holidays? The next thing that we want to put in is when classes start and when classes end, right? That's really important. We also want to put in midterms or finals, right? If we have, my daughter goes, and her terms are only 10 weeks. Like, they're really, really fast. And so by the time she starts, it's already finals. So they need to have a 10,000 view, so to speak, of these things. So that's why we start with the year calendar. The next view that we need, so we're creating a 3D picture. We have the big view. We need to be able to see a month at once. Okay. This allows the brain to do project planning. Again, we're going to start with fun. When do I get to go to the concert? When do I get to see my friends, right? We need to have the fun on there first. Then we're going to use it for assignments that are due in the future, not the ones that are due each week, but the one that takes multiple steps and is due in the future. And we're going to draw it like sideways like this with a highlighter so that we are marking the space of time we have to do that project. And so a different class would be in a different color. We can also use the month calendar to write down the day homework is assigned. This is regular homework or assignments that have to be turned in. And then, of course, cross them off for dopamine when they're done. Ours also comes with a little note place. So you could say, oh, don't forget to make an appointment with your counselor this month. Don't forget to buy plane tickets home, whatever it is. Okay. This form takes a while to get used to, but this is helping students manage their classes. So we start with the date at top. Then we have a class. So it's double-sided. So if you have more than 5 classes, you can do that. And then in college, our courses or our classes are usually requiring more pieces than just an assignment or just the reading. So this is built so that whatever we have to do in psychology is in the first column. So the readings at the top, these are the readings we have to do. The next one is what's due this week and what day is it due so I can keep track and make sure I turned it in. If we have some project steps, again, those long-term things, they go right here. We also need to review or study the information. Repeat to remember, remember to repeat. This is how the learning gets stronger. So that's this section. We might want to have a study group, right? So we're going to put that there. And then at the bottom, you might put some notes that you don't want to forget to do. But when we're planning, we don't want to only plan the work. We want to also plan our life. So here's where we make sure we're getting exercise, we're getting out into nature. When are we going to see our friends, right? Maybe I have to work while I'm at school. So I'm going to have to make sure I have a note of that as well. There are chores to be done. And don't forget to call the parents, right? That'll make us happy if they're calling us and saying hello, especially if it's our birthday. Okay, so you can take just another minute and think about which tool you would be most likely to use. Which tool would you be most likely to introduce to your student?
I will say, I'm just going to tell everybody as you're putting stuff in the chat, my favorite is this frickin' planner. But that's because I'm a big planner person. And so when I was actually talking to Julie about it, it was how beneficial when you're thinking about that huge shift and change for your student going into college, like to be able to really organize stuff. And I was like, I mean, you could change the title to that to say high school at the top of it and still be able to use it there, and start to get a lot of fabulous practice in regards to it.
Yeah, I will say, yeah, I'll just piggyback on that, Crystal. So the one that I'm showing you is our college one. We do have a high school one, which is very similar. It's just that managing homework piece is by day instead of by course. So some of my high school students prefer the college one, and some of them like the one that's by day.
Totally. And we got a good combo here. Analog clock, weekly planner, timer, planner, introducing to my daughter to adjust to life and classes while on her own, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
Great.
I'll put the link to the planner in the chat for you guys.
Yeah.
Carry on.
We also offer the college planner. Well, actually, any of the planners, they come with a QR code so that you can link to our online course. So it's just a set of videos on how to set it up. They're very short. Mary D does a great job of explaining the steps and why they're there. But if that isn't your cup of tea, we also offer 2 sessions with myself in order to get started on it. So tonight we've explored executive function skills. We realize that humans need strong executive function skills for school success and beyond. By understanding how the brain is wired and what might affect my executive functions, we can understand what tools we want to use, and this will lead us to success. So I am going to open it up now to questions, and then I can show you some of the things we have to support you. Or Crystal, do you want me to do these things first and then questions?
Yeah, do those things first.
Yeah, okay. So actually, we're here to help. This is, again, our college planner is there. Everything I'm talking about tonight, you can find at executivefunctioningsuccess.com. A lot of the tools like the timers and the clocks and things, those are all there. We offer a curriculum of 10 weeks to support individuals and families who want to go more in depth into their executive functions and learn more strategies. We offer professional trainings in schools and workplaces. We have an awesome newsletter. So if you go to executivefunctioning.com, executivefunctioningsuccess.com, it'll say, do you want to join our newsletter? Join our newsletter. We are a very small company. There are only 3 of us. And the newsletters don't go out all the time, and we don't sell it to anybody. And it's very easy to opt out if you don't want it. And also check out the 50 tips book, right? This is a great resource, especially if you have younger children around middle school. This is a great resource. It's also just great to just flip through and hear the science behind the tips. And Mary D has great advice in there. Okay, that is me.
Awesome. So, and I'm going to, so I put in the chat for you guys, and I know that, I had asked Julie the same thing about the planner. Is it paper only or is it electronic?
It
And
is. Oh,
paper
sorry. Go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah.
No.
But it was conversation then of like, well, it'd be pretty cool if we made it electronic. So we put the bug in the ear
Yeah, she did. She did.
about that. Um, And I wanted to, so for those of you that are current clients that have access to College Planner Pro, you have in your files one that is titled Executive Functioning. And in there, you're going to see the link as well to the College Planner, because I like that one better than the high school one, but that's just me. You can use it to get to the website either way. And then the other thing that's in there is the curriculum is called Seeing My Time. So Julie was great and created this to give you that highlight reel in regards to how the curriculum works and the overview of what functions you're going to be working on in terms of that process. And then the final page has what she was just saying, which right now, I think so there is a session that she has starting September 24th. So if you're like, I would really like to get in on this, but I want to be able to do this more as a group opportunity in order to save on cost, that is the next session that she has coming up. So if you really want to get prepped and ready for the sake of supporting for this next academic year, that's a really awesome opportunity. Or you can definitely reach out and be able to talk to her more specifically about the one-on-one opportunities and what that would look like for you or your kiddo. And so I just wanted to let you know, I put this in the chat. I know sometimes people have trouble getting things out of the Zoom chat. And so if you do, and you want, you can always just reach out directly to Julie in order to get this information. But reality is that you have it in your files in College Planner Pro for those of you that are clients. So it is easy to access.
I also put my email in the chat. It's just julie@efsuccess.com.
Perfect. Yes. And I will, I'll put, and feel free as I'm chatting, guys, if you guys have questions or clarifications on anything for Julie in this process, please do so. But I'll put the recording of tonight's file of tonight's presentation in your files. So that will be in that same folder, in the executive functioning folder. For those of you that are joining us from either my constant contact list or Facebook group or wherever else, I'm going to post it in all of those places as well for the sake of the recording. So feel free to share this with others that you feel need to understand how this world of executive functioning works. Questions that you guys have that you want answered. We got to thank you so much. You're welcome.
You're so welcome.
And I was really excited about this because I feel like I have had significantly more neurodiverse students over the years, and we were actually talking about that today because we had an essay session, and I was like, we have a lot of neurodiverse students in different capacities, and just in general, I think you had said this too, right? Like these skills are taught, right? They are learned. They are not just a natural aptitude that we have, and sometimes we forget about that, especially as parents, and thinking like, well, my kid should have this figured out. I heard something fabulous this weekend. Don't should on people.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
Because it doesn't do anybody any good. But starting to recognize that, you know, my kid too, she got diagnosed with dyslexia this year. Well, she's gonna have to work a little bit harder at some of these skills. She is very time and not adept. And so I automatically start thinking about these things just as my kid gets older. And then, of course, I get to see so many different things in working with all of the other teenagers in this process. So it's super fascinating. So I want to thank you very much for doing this, and excited to get to host this session every year so that more people can become aware.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Yeah. Anybody have any questions? They wanted me to go. I want to touch on just two things quickly. One is the virtual or the digital versus the hard copy. The difference there is the digital world is out of sight and out of mind. So keeping that in mind, we have to have a balance with our students on how they're going to do things and where they're going to do it. And the more choice you give them, the better. And the more experiments they can do, the better. Try it virtual and see, try it electronically and see if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we might need to have it on paper to be able to see it. So we approach this as you don't have to do it exactly this way. I love our planner. I have used it for almost 10 years and I wouldn't go anywhere without it. However, with students and younger people, we really have to invite them into the tools in order for them to realize that they are helpful. Yeah.
So true.
Quiet group you have, Miss Crystal.
I know. That's just because everything, you know, it was all very clear. Like there's all very clear. So, okay, well then I'm gonna pause recording and we will